So the goal that I'm going to go through today is go through some trends in the industry that we and I have seen. Now, Ian introduced me as the head of growth. If that sounds like an ambiguous title, it's on purpose. It's supposed to be spending my time looking at trends, industry, products, partners, and how we can help our customers or our partners, like you guys, do your jobs better. So hopefully you guys will be able to take some takeaways from what we see in the industry to help you with your coming years. So to start out, let's look at the economy in general. So analysis is forecasting large enterprise spending cuts driven by higher costs, mainly labor, fuel, and energy. The foreign exchange rates, and everyone in this room can probably speak to the woes more than I can. It's hurting the EU, doing business with the EU, although there has been some recent relief in the recent months. If you look at a chart on your right, you'll see there is widespread US consumer spending is slowing in almost every major category. Inflation, although better in the recent months, is one of the biggest fears of US consumers. In coming into 2023, 43% of pollees said it's their number one financial concern for the coming year. Housing prices are down, which is good news. In San Francisco, I saw a studio with about 900 square feet, which is 20 square meters, with a brick wall view, sell for under $1 million. So pretty amazing. Unfortunately, spiking interest rates have made costs difficult. So we have this interesting market that's called a nobody's market, where you have a bunch of people holding on to really high prices and a bunch of demand that can't quite get there in terms of meeting. So that will probably shake out in the coming year. To sum up the market, 80% of US adults are bracing for economic woes or economic difficulty, and 98% of CEOs are preparing for recession. So it's safe to say that us marketers, or marketeers as the Brits say, are preparing for headwinds in 2023. I just realized this might be a really depressing slide. I don't mean it to be. There are some silver linings, and we'll try to go through those. So if you look at Standard & Poor's tech stock index, they were down 22% at the end of last year. This is the first time in a long time the tech sector had actually been down year over year. And as a result, the companies are shoring up defenses to prepare for some economic uncertainty. Last month, as you probably know people that were impacted. There were widespread layoffs in the tech sector. Around 1,600 per day is what it netted out to be, or 50,000 jobs that were opened up in the tech sector, or I guess closed down is probably a better way of saying that. To pick on Google specifically, they trimmed 6% of their workforce at the end of last year. But for context, they were up 32% since the beginning of COVID, so they were kind of right-sizing the organization. And if you look at what the CEOs are saying, they're taking full responsibility for the mistakes, which is nice. It's nice. Unfortunately, it's full responsibility of the people who are riffed to go get new jobs. So confusingly last week, paradoxically, the US market had a blowout job report, confounding all expectations and analysis. And it turns out US is seeing the lowest job vacancy rate since 1969. Opportunities for you guys. This could be a boon for your business. Could give you access to difficult roles. Traditionally, people are having a hard time hiring data scientists, analytics, and people that have machine learning responsibilities. If there are large departments, we've seen large departments of these organizations get cut, and that could mean that you can actually start to hire them and get them. The reason why these organizations are cutting these parts of the business is because they're usually big investment parts of businesses. And because they're big investment parts, they're cutting them when things get lean. Digital ad market, to double click on the digital ad market specifically, the COVID, back one. Nope, I'm sorry. Thank you, Alex. Alex is doing my clicker. Double click on the ad economy. COVID, which was a huge boon for a lot of our businesses in digital media, is finally over. The party's over, and This, coupled with people going back to work, coupled with ATT or privacy policy, economic uncertainty, has ripple effects that's coming throughout all of advertising. Global ad spend is slowing, but still growing, 3 to 5%, depending on your source material. Privacy and policy are additional headwinds, which we'll double click on later. Analysis is calling for softening demands over all sectors, and agencies are seeing very late 2023 budget approvals from their advertisers, which is pretty rare, and at this time of the year for them to not have budgets, it's pretty strange. I hear that they're giving every excuse in the book of why they don't have the budgets approved, but it's pretty widespread. The demand is soft. I said spend is falling in a lot of sectors, but the upside is CPMs might be more accessible for you guys. Google confirmed that lower CPMs were the reason they narrowly missed last week in their earnings statement. And then for you guys also, if you're not facing scrutiny, you're probably facing reduced marketing budgets. We'll talk about some of the opportunities in that in later slides. So let's talk gaming. Gaming is important, probably not directly relevant to most of the people in this room, but it's a juggernaut in our industry. So as a reminder, 70% of all earnings in the mobile app stores come through games, and some of their CPMs they command the highest rates. So last year, gaming was down 3 to 5%, which is notable in that looking at the last 10 years since the advent of mobile games, that's when you were playing Fruit Ninja on the iPhone 3, this industry had grown at gangbusters, 30% year over year. And for the first time, it's actually shrunk since its inception. The headwinds games are facing are 3 parts: ATT, iOS privacy policy, which is something that we're all facing, but games specifically have a hard time retargeting, and they make all their money off of unique users, and they target and find those unique users. With ATT blocking that, they can't find them, so it reduces their marketing efficacy. Increasingly creative restrictions, which is, honestly, if you guys have tried to play a mobile game recently, it's probably a good thing because they're getting a little bit out of hand with the amount of the ads that were blowing you up. I have a buddy that found out, he runs a mobile game, a card game, and he found out that someone was targeting his app with full screen ads that had copied his canvas and said, you have to update. Click the button, and it takes them to the competitor's app store. Pretty good idea, but. And then the final headwind from these games we're facing is decreased access to VC capital. They're getting a little bit more scrutiny, getting under more scrutiny with their dollars they're spending. And this spending is a self-fulfilling prophecy. It allows you to buy yourself to the top of the app store, get a bunch of organics, and stay there. That capital isn't available, so those game companies are having a hard time spending. The good news is that opens up inventory for the rest of us. Regularly, these games are spending $100 CPMs consistently, and specifically your opportunity is video and reward video in this section, so look for opening up opportunities in these sectors. Retail and e-commerce, which probably is better targeted for this group. Most sources are expecting consumers to pull back or become more price sensitive in 2023. Compounding this, COVID supply chain bottlenecks have actually slackened, allowing a buildup of inventory. Softening of consumer demand combined with the buildup of inventory leads to a promotional heavy beginning of 2023. So we're expecting promotional heavy 2023, and these e-tail and e-commerce companies are starting to focus ROI on their media budgets. So we've seen a lot of our customers start to get away from the ethereal KPIs that are kind of directional and pull back to how do we actually map spend to our actual earnings. And not a surprise to probably most people in this room, studies have shown that owned and earned, or your own customers, are 5 to 25 times less expensive to obtain than a newly acquired user. So a lot of these channels are actually focusing on increasing the priority of re-engagement, retention, engagement, activation, focusing on their existing customers. But again, there's light at the end of the tunnel. If you look at the chart on the right, you'll see that the year-over-year Facebook spend is actually doing far better. This company did a poll of 300 e-commerce brands, and they found out that Facebook had actually reached ROIs that were equivalent of a 14.5 precursor. So Very good news for us looking forward. So paid media advertising, which is a natural next step. Paid media, the most interesting trend that we're seeing is that Meta and Google are getting traction with their large-scale machine learning performance-led algorithms, their products. The term broad targeting is kind of key here, and that's indicative of what these algorithms are doing. So you look at a lookalike campaign as the way things used to work in the past, and Meta and Google would take information about those lookalike campaigns and canvas or retarget those users, canvas looking for folks that share similarities. Now you're sending signal back up to the networks, and they have to look over the entire world to find indicators that are actually valuable users for your clients. That means that it's essentially a black box. The good news is it does seem like they've cracked the reduced signal from ATT. So anecdotally, one large media agency turned around and spent 40% of their Q4 budget on this new Meta product called Advantage Shopping Campaign, or Advantage Plus, or A+, if you're one of the cool kids. And likewise, Google's Performance Max, or PMax, is working well for clients. Downside, again, black box means there's very little optimization that you guys can do as marketers. Very little very little optimization for campaigns specifically. So it leads you to the question of, like, how do you actually do a better job buying with these platforms? We'll get into that a little bit later. So I guess I already said the budgets are being held back. Every excuse in the book from the agencies. Now look at performance. Meta and Google earnings have had a good Q4. It started late, but picked up around the holidays. Most people have, especially retail e-com, have said that they've actually seen pretty good late Q4 spend. And that is indicative of why these companies, Meta and Google, had these narrow misses, slow Q4 that picked up later. TikTok, still hit or miss for brands. I've heard largely is dependent on the audience you're looking for. I mean, I guess that kind of makes sense. If you're looking for Gen Z, Gen Alphas, TikTok's your place. If you're trying to sell coasters to boomers, TikTok's probably not where you want to go. YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels are fighting back, gaining market share against TikTok. Pinterest, large level. Snap, kind of the big loser, not really getting a lot of traction for performance buying. So analysts are bullish on how Meta and Google are going to be able to perform in the coming year, despite these privacy headwinds. We'll talk about Scan's impact on these buys in a subsequent slide. Going into subscription apps. So subscription apps are still a thing and growing. Apple can't seem to make a wrong move here, as boasts just under 1 billion subscribers, which is up 10% year over year. And Spotify, whom we'll hear from later on the stage actually, posted in their earnings that they're up 14% in subscribers, up to 200 million for paid subscribers, and monthly actives makes no difference, around 500 million. That's insane. There is some caution that industry pundits are claiming, which is subscriber fatigue. 47% of pollees are put off by the number of subscriptions in market. So that is a real fear that you should be watching out for. Some interesting facts that I found that I think you guys will all like. 3.7% of downloads start a free trial. 40% of those convert. Less than 2% of downloads actually convert to paid. And above all, renewals, of all factors, renewals hinges on app quality. If you're interested in more or want to see those benchmarks for your own sector, Revenue Cat has a great report you should check out. Okay, alternative channels. This is non-traditional paid channels for acquiring users. CTV is the big one here. In fact, you could probably argue it's not even an alternative anymore. 30% year-over-year growth spend. U.S. hit $24 billion in spend last year. One of the most amazing figures to me is reach. 92% of U.S. households are reached by CTV, OTT devices. Netflix serves as one of the best examples of an inflection point of kind of taking it mainstream, especially since Netflix, HBO, and Disney are all under increased scrutiny to increase profitability. And the best way to increase profitability for paid is to open up for advertising. So that could be an opportunity for us. Analysts were somewhat disappointed in Q4 spend on CTV, largely due to measurement issues. It's very hard to measure the impact on your brand when you have a TV that has an ad. How does that relate to your web page or mobile app. In fact, Asta, who's a product manager up in the upper level, is working on a product for this purpose, cross-device attribution. So you can actually check when you serve an ad if you've had impact of your brand or device or phone or app or whatever on a different device in the same region. So that should be pretty exciting. Other channels, influencer marketing, again, hit or miss. I've heard some anecdotal influencer marketing disappointments. There was a big brand that sent 75 of the most popular influencers out to Dubai. And in the TikTok videos they were doing, 33 of them forgot which brand they were repping. So that, again, is hit or miss. Secondary platforms, Quora, Pinterest, Reddit. Preload campaigns to get your app on with the carriers or device manufacturers, App Store optimization, and even third-party app stores, which are getting a lot more steam, especially as the industry is starting to scrutinize the dominance of the app stores. Can't turn over a stone without hearing about ChatGPT or the large language models that are out there. A lot of us in marketing are questioning the actual applicability, but one thing that I found interesting is that iOS is including Stable Diffusion APIs. Stable Diffusion is the auto image generators, including those APIs in the one of the subsequent iOS releases to allow developers to use that in-app. The bad news for alternative channels is that during times of uncertainty, these test budgets are often first to get cut. So the more pressure there is on the economy, the more volatile these budgets end up. All right, let's talk about privacy. Now, I could spend 30 minutes by myself on this talking, but I don't want to bore you all to tears, so I'll give you the high level. So, iOS scan update. First thing is, it's kind of a dirty secret that most companies are struggling and don't get good signal out of iOS. So if you're in that tier, then you're not alone. Scan 4.0 was released at the end of last year. Now, this will increase signal capabilities that can be sent back to the ad networks. The problem is you have to figure out how you're going to use those signals, and some of the best and brightest minds in our industry are currently arguing over how to best do it, and this is Meta, Google, whatever, engineers. All of this has to happen by the ad networks. The ad networks have to figure out how to get access to this increased signal and build it into their learning models. So we're going to probably hear guidelines from Google and Meta in the coming months on what you need to do. Our recommendation is start simple, and if you really want to get aggressive, you can add some variability with your simplicity. In most cases, you're going to want to send signal as soon as possible and broadly rather than narrow and late. And the reason you want to do this is early level, broad signal is going to give better signals faster back to the networks, which allow them to purchase or to find better lookalike campaigns faster. Google Sandbox, it's still coming. They promise us. We expect an announcement sometime this year on when it will be actually impacted. The good news for all of us in this room is that Google doesn't want to pull the rug out on us, mostly because they don't want to pull the rug out on themselves. So the shared influence is a good thing for all of us. They won't pull an Apple. Now, it's important to note that policy does not mean regulation. If you achieve the privacy policy instilled by Google and or Apple, that does not mean that you achieve regulation, that you adhere to regulations. So if you want to drill into regulations, it's a total mess, let's be totally honest. Most concerning to me are two legal cases, one, actually both in the EU. France is suing Voodoo. Voodoo is a big games company out of Paris for the use of first-party data for advertising. Meta is being sued in Ireland right now for the same reason. Why this is important is because everyone in this room tracks first-party data. An analytics platform is first-party data. And conceivably, if you take a purchase from a user and then you tell them later, would you want to purchase again, that could be construed as advertising. And using IDs for that, that could, with first-party data, end up being a problem according to these court sessions. So I've been instructed to say this is not legal advice and should not be construed as legal advice, and consult your attorneys for sure. But one thing is for sure, it's not getting easier. 11 countries and 15 US states are all coming out with separate policies, and it's definitely going to get worse before it gets better. It's kind of evolved into like a whack-a-mole situation where they're going after the deepest pockets first. Best example is India sued Facebook, copying and pasting a ruling by EU for 136 million. Just said, oh, us too, violation. So the silver bullet here, and again, not legal advice, seems to be user consent. You can kind of get your way around any problems if you can get user consent. And that will all shake out, I think, with, well, we know, eventually in the courts. But getting user consent seems to be the right way. Okay, so what are people doing if they can't focus on black box marketing, or they can't do anything when they're just feeding campaigns in this black box of Meta or Google? And the answer is they're going down funnel. So Meta and Google now, in their black boxes, are taking on the targeting, taking on the acquisition, and that's leaving the marketing teams to impact lower funnel. If you can't focus on acquisition, you focus on better conversions, better onboarding experiences, creative optimization, customization, and creative optimization, customization to help with your campaign's effectiveness. So let's talk about better onboarding. Essentially, the goal here is to create a fluid user journey from your ad all the way down to whatever your conversion event is. If you think about it, if you can increase a user's journey by 5%, their conversion to where you want them to go, that's the same as having a 5% increase in your overall budget. So it can actually make a big difference. In this example you see on the right, oh, sorry, Alex. One more. The example on the right here is CVS, which is a department store in the US. They can actually, using a branch product, click on the ad, go to the app store, and then either download the app, reroute to mobile web, or go to a deep link to the actual product in the app. Or if you download the app, then it will delayed deep link open up the product in the app. And that can actually help create a more fluid process. And when you ask, does it actually matter? The answer is yes. We're seeing massive conversion lifts. This is not a plug. This is just one of the things. A 6x increase at 5% CTR. So there are material gains by decreasing the friction of your user onboarding. Okay, creative optimization. So creative is changing. The biggest change right now for the social media platforms is the advent of SFV, or short form video, which is often most effective at less than 10 seconds. It's also highly performing using UGC. There's a lot of agencies that talk about the best performing creative of the year was created on the train into the office using a meme template, and that ended up being the most effective of the entire year. So as a result, these agencies are starting in-house practices to help with production, and it's not this high production value, it's just iterating and spinning them out. Creative optimization is a pretty interesting topic when you think about it. The cost is fixed. You buy the ad space, that cost is fixed, that money is spent, but the creative that you put in its place matters for conversion. And that's like free optimization depending on what you're actually advertising. And testing and iterating is the best way to find out what's actually going to be the best creative there. And if you think about a creative's performance trend in the wild, it's actually pretty fascinating. I took this from Eric Sufred, if you guys read Mobile Dev Memo. So when it's new and exciting up in the top left, it's users are seeing it for the first time. It has this very quick deceleration cycle where users basically see it, they get it, understand it, and it reaches a new low in performance. Your mileage may vary with this. The idea is once you optimize the creative, you can get to the next slide where you'll see that these curves overlap each other. You can actually raise the mean performance if you can time that decaying life cycle right at the inflection point. So the idea of creative optimization is to figure out right when your creatives start to lose efficacy and add a new one. So I don't want to scare you on this one, but basically the final aspect of creative optimization, which is really interesting, is a concept of assigning customized creative to specific targets. Now this is obviously a little bit more advanced. But the idea is you find a creative that works with a specific platform, campaign, device, even source in some cases. This is kind of the reverse of native ads, where the native ads, you would take your assets and give them to the publisher and they would make them pretty. Now it's your responsibility to take the creative and make it most effective in wherever it's landing. And this can be a great way of seeing lift. In fact, I worked at a ad performance partner, or a DSP, that would do media buying, and we had these very fancy machine learning algorithms that were finding the best spot to buy, the best time of day, et cetera, et cetera. But by far, the best way to increase our performance was a team of college kids that were spinning out creative, finding the best one, iterating on that, and then running a new one. So creative optimization could be a great way, low cost, relatively low cost, at increasing your marketing efficacy. And then the final slide is just ad tech M&A. Briefly looking at the vendor market, you may have known that in 2021, it was very exciting to be in ad tech, somewhat stressful for those of us who had to try to do deals. Multiples were spiking at 30x, giving a lot of people a lot of FOMO. Came down drastically in 2022, which spooked a lot of buyers. Analysts are expecting stability in 2023, which is going to allow buyers to come back in, spur transactions for this ad and MarTech platforms. The output for you is you might see some consolidation of vendors, potentially volatility in your stock prices depending on how close you are to this. But consolidation of vendors might actually help. I'm sure your purchasing departments are all over your case for vendor consolidation. You might end up having two vendors that end up doing the same thing or end up being under the same umbrella. I'm done. We got through that, guys. Thank you.